Hi there, this is Soft Philosophy for Sleep. Tonight, we journey into the calm and unshakable mind of Seneca, the man who taught the world that peace does not come from avoiding adversity, but from mastering our own response to it. In an age of noise and unease, we so often lose ourselves in what lies beyond our control. Seneca reminds us, true freedom does not exist in the outer world, but in the way we choose to see it. Tonight, you are not merely listening to philosophy, you are returning to your quiet strength within, the place where all turbulence softens, where reason and acceptance become the twin wings that allow the soul to rest. Let the Stoic wisdom guide you through the waves of anxiety until you see that even amid chaos, there remains a stillness no one can touch. And that stillness is you. Part 1. The Quiet Fortress of the Mind. Seneca once wrote, "Man is disturbed not by things, but by the view he takes of them." That sentence is the first doorway into the Stoic world, where one learns to build a silent fortress within the mind, invulnerable to the turbulence of life. In this life, there is little we can truly control. The outer world flows like a restless river. Fame comes and goes, those we love depart. Health fades, time passes without ever looking back. Yet Seneca teaches that when we withdraw inward, we find the only place untouched by storms, the mind disciplined by reason. The fortress of the mind is not built of stone or steel. It is built from thoughts tempered through trial, from the ability to distinguish clearly between what we can control and what we cannot, from calmness in emotion and courage in suffering. This is not evasion, but the strength of a soul no longer ruled by external change. Seneca believed that all human suffering begins with a single subtle mistake. We imagine that we can govern the world, but the world was not made to obey us. It moves by its own order, one that often challenges our will. The moment we attempt to bend the universe to our desires, we drive ourselves into misery. The wise person, Seneca says, is the one who learns to bend himself so that he may move in harmony with the order of the cosmos. Perhaps that is why he wrote, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. A tranquil mind strips adversity of its power. When calm, nothing can truly harm us, not insult, not loss, not solitude. The mind becomes a citadel, and reason its faithful guard. But that citadel is not built overnight. Seneca reminds us that no one becomes wise in an hour. Wisdom must be forged like steel in every moment of self-awareness. We begin by observing our own reactions. When insulted, do we tremble? When rejected, do we recoil in fear? When the world disobeys our wishes, do we turn ourselves into its victim? Each time we notice the mind waver, we have the chance to place another stone in the wall of our inner fortress. Seneca does not teach indifference. He teaches us to feel without being devoured. Emotions are waves. We are the rower. The waves may be fierce, yet the oar remains in our hands. The Stoic does not extinguish feeling. He learns to steer it. He knows that emotion is but a fleeting response of the mind to the world, and that reason can illuminate it before it becomes a storm. In our modern world, where noise surrounds us and anxiety has become ordinary, Seneca's words resound with renewed clarity. He seems to speak across 2,000 years. You must retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make you a better man. Withdraw into yourself, not to isolate, but to restore order within. It is a retreat of the soul, an act of wisdom, not of fear. For when the mind is still, the world is still. When reason governs, no tempest can truly overthrow us. Others may think us motionless, yet in truth, this is the state of quiet strength, a power that needs no display, no conquest, only balance. Seneca lived amidst power and peril, advisor to a tyrant emperor, witness to intrigue, betrayal, and the shadow of death itself. Yet he never lost himself. In every letter to Lucilius, he spoke not of politics, but of the freedom of the mind. For him, that freedom was the one possession no force could take away. And thus begins our journey tonight. We do not need a peaceful world to find peace. We need only to learn how to be peaceful within a world that never rests. In that way, the fortress of the mind is built. No walls, no towers, only the light of awareness illuminating every dark corner within. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Seneca. That is his final reminder in this opening lesson. Let every night be a classroom, every hardship a test, and every quiet moment like this one an invitation to live more deeply, more slowly, and more freely. And when the fortress of the mind has begun to take shape, Seneca invites us toward the next lesson, to learn how to love our fate, so that we not only endure what happens, but greet it with gratitude. Part 2. The Art of Accepting Fate. Seneca once said, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a lesson modern minds often resist: to love one's fate, not merely to accept it, but to love it. A love born of intellect, not blindness, of understanding, not surrender. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, of everything life brings, whether pain or joy, loss or prosperity. Seneca did not speak from ease. His life was steeped in trial, exile, betrayal, and, in the end, forced suicide by the very emperor he once served. And yet, in his letters to Lucilius, he wrote with serene composure, "Accept in full whatever happens." That composure makes his philosophy more than theory. It becomes a way of living, proven by the life that bore it. We spend our days resisting life. When we lose what we love, we suffer. When what we hope for does not arrive, we grow bitter. When what we fear comes to pass, we despair. But Seneca believed that pain does not arise from the events themselves. It comes from how we interpret them. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, he wrote. In our minds, we multiply tragedies 1,000-fold. In reality, life is a series of neutral events, without meaning, until we choose to give them meaning. Acceptance is not the same as resignation. It is, in fact, the highest form of action, the action of reason. When we stop resisting what cannot be changed, we free our energy for what can be, our attitude. And within that attitude, dignity is born. Seneca viewed life as a grand play directed by the divine. We must play the part assigned to us well, he wrote, whether it be that of a poor man, a cripple, a ruler, or a commoner. No one chooses their role, but everyone chooses how they play it. A man who plays the pauper with courage is nobler than one who plays the king in fear. When we begin to accept fate, we release ourselves from futile resistance. We stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift marks the passage from victim to master. For Seneca, acceptance does not weaken us. It is the purest expression of self-command. In one of his letters he wrote, "A good character, when tested by misfortune, shines even more brightly. Gold proves its worth only through fire. So, too, a soul reveals its strength only through trial. Fate is the forge of the spirit, the place where illusions burn away, and we learn to live as our truest selves. The love of fate is not a call to passive acceptance of injustice. It is a reminder that every event belongs to a deeper order, one that human reason is not always vast enough to comprehend. When we view life as a whole, even suffering finds its rightful place in the greater design. A painting is not complete without its shadows. Seneca once wrote about the death of his son, a loss no wisdom can mend. Yet instead of despair, he turned to understanding. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. He did not speak in bitterness, but with insight that life's fragility is what makes every remaining moment a gift. When we accept, we become lighter. When we love our fate, we become free. For that love releases us from conflict with reality. Nothing exhausts the human soul more than demanding that the world be otherwise. But the moment we begin to say yes to what is, our energy changes course. From fighting to creating, from resistance to transformation. Imagine the soul as water. When we struggle, the surface breaks, ripples, and distorts its reflection. But when we accept, the water grows still, and suddenly it mirrors the sky. Amor fati is that stillness, not the silence of despair, but the quiet of deep understanding. The Stoic does not flee from fate. He moves in harmony with it. He does not ask the divine. Why? He says only, "Let me walk beside you through whatever comes." And in that companionship, the soul finds its ultimate solace, the assurance that whatever happens, we still belong to the order of the cosmos, still flow within the current of eternal reason. To love fate does not mean to stop dreaming. It means only to stop fighting reality. We still act, still strive, but our actions are free from the bitterness of resistance. We do our part and leave the rest to the larger order of which we are but a small, conscious fragment. Seneca believed that when a person reaches this state, they no longer fear anything, not failure, not loss, not even death. For within them, every possibility has already been welcomed. This is the art of acceptance, an art with no technique, only awareness. And awareness is born of trust. Trust that everything which happens carries its purpose within the architecture of the universe, even when our small reason cannot yet see it. Align yourself with nature, and you will never be poor. Oppose her, and you will never be rich. Seneca. And once we have learned to love what life gives, Seneca invites us deeper into the roots of suffering itself, the endless desires we nurture within the mind. The next lesson unfolds into the art of mastering desire, to remind us that freedom is not having everything, but being mastered by nothing. Part 3. The discipline of desire. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Beneath that simple line lies a deep truth about the nature of desire, the force that drives life forward, yet also sows the seeds of our deepest unrest. If the previous lesson teaches us to love our fate, this one teaches us to free ourselves from the illusions of desire. For it is not adversity, but desire itself that binds the soul in invisible chains. Seneca observed that human beings, in Rome as in our own time, live in a constant state of lack. No matter how much we possess, it never feels enough. No matter what we achieve, something else still appears more valuable. We chase fame, and when we have it, we long for peace. We crave love, and once we find it, we fear its loss. All our lives we wander through endless desires, believing we are moving toward freedom, when in truth we are only wandering deeper into the labyrinth of dependency. For Seneca, desire itself is not evil, it simply must be mastered. Like fire, when left unchecked, it destroys; when governed, it warms. The Stoic does not extinguish desire. He disciplines it to serve reason. He distinguishes between two kinds, those rooted in necessity and those born from illusion. In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "If you wish to be rich, do not add to your money, but subtract from your desire." He speaks not only of wealth, but of life itself. True richness lies not in how much we possess, but in how little we need. When we learn to lessen our wants, the world suddenly feels wider, our breath deeper, our steps lighter. We often confuse need with desire. Needs belong to the body, to eat, to sleep, to breathe. Desire belongs to the ego, to be admired, to surpass others, to prove oneself. Seneca saw that this craving, to be more, is the true source of anxiety. For when life is built upon comparison, peace becomes impossible. There will always be someone richer, more beautiful, more content. And so we enter a race without a finish line, where reason is replaced by envy and fear. Seneca smiled, not in scorn, but in understanding, at those who pursued pleasure without limit. He knew their suffering. Those ruled by desire never live in the present. They dwell always in the future, in a vague someday where happiness is promised. But when they finally reach what they wanted, joy proves brief, and they must invent another pursuit to stay alive. Thus begins the cycle of sorrow. A truly free person, Seneca says, is one who can look upon his desires and smile. He neither chases nor denies them. He simply observes, and in that awareness, desire loses its dominion, for no desire is more dangerous than the one we do not see. Seneca advised Lucilius to ask himself each night, "What did I desire today? And what did I gain by it?" The question seems simple, yet it lies at the heart of Stoic practice. It turns every day into a mirror for the soul. We begin to see how many of our actions spring not from reason, but from the fear of lack. Fear of losing love, of losing status, of being unseen. But once we look directly at these fears, we discover they are only shadows. Desire, Seneca teaches, cannot be destroyed, but it can be transformed. Like mountain rain, when guided, it nourishes the fields. When left wild, it floods and consumes. To train the mind is to learn how to guide that flow toward virtue, serenity, and inner mastery. He wrote, "No man is free, who is a slave to his body. Freedom is not the fulfillment of every desire. It is the mastery over desire itself. Modern people often mistake indulgence for freedom, yet it is a subtle form of slavery. Each time we yield blindly to pleasure, we surrender a piece of the mind's sovereignty. When we live simply, the world begins to feel abundant. A modest meal, a quiet morning, a good book. These small things regain their sacred weight once the mind ceases to demand the extravagant. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And in simplicity, the soul becomes wealthier than any treasure. Look closely. Are not most of our worries born from wanting more? To be acknowledged, to be loved in a certain way, to keep what was never ours to begin with? But if we can love our fate, as in the previous lesson, then we can also love enoughness, not because we are forced to, but because we have seen through the illusion of wanting that every desire is merely an echo of a mind that has not yet understood itself. And once we understand, the echo softens. We need not silence it. We simply listen gently, as one listens to the sound of waves on a shore. The waves remain, but the listener has changed. If you live according to nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich. Seneca nature for Seneca never asks for much. It is the human mind that complicates existence. To discipline desire, then, is to return to nature's order, a harmony in which nothing is lacking and nothing is excessive. When desire has been understood and placed back in its proper place, Seneca leads us to the next step, learning to release control. For even the simple life can still suffer if we keep trying to force the world to move according to our will. And there, in that futile struggle, the illusion of control reveals the true root of all anxiety. Part 4. The illusion of control. Seneca once said, "No man was ever wise by chance." Wisdom is never an accident, for true understanding does not come from mastering everything, but from knowing our limits. And within those limits, we learn the greatest lesson of Stoic philosophy. We do not control the world. We only control how we respond to it. For centuries, humankind has tried to bend nature's laws. We build dams to hold back rivers, walls to block the wind, and inventions to defy time itself. Yet the more we try to control, the more fearful we become. The seasons still turn, people still leave, the body still ages. The tighter we grasp, the faster the world slips through our fingers. Seneca saw this paradox clearly. He wrote in On Providence, "A great mind becomes braver in the face of misfortunes, not because it can command misfortune, but because it can command itself. For Seneca, self-mastery is the highest power. A man may lose his wealth, his position, even his name, but if he keeps his calm, he remains free. The truly imprisoned are not those bound by chains, but those bound by the desire to control. We tremble when the world disobeys us, because we have been raised on the illusion that everything can be ours if only we try hard enough. Stoic philosophy draws a sharper line. There are things up to us, within the reach of our will, and things not up to us, forever beyond it. The weather, the opinions of others, the passing of time, none belong to us, but our courage, our calm, our response to those things, these are ours alone. It is a simple division, yet profound, the outer world and the inner world. The wise live at the border between the two, knowing they can govern only half of life, the half that lies within the mind. Seneca once wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. He did not weep for fate, but for the blindness of man, for our belief that we are the center of the universe. The ego wants to command everything, and that very wish exhausts us. The harder we clutch, the more we lose, like sand slipping through closed hands." In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca advised, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." This is not the counsel of passivity, but the wisdom of one who understands the laws of the cosmos. We cannot stop a river's current, but we can learn to swim with it. We cannot halt the wind, but we can set our sails. The feeling of control is one of the sweetest illusions humankind has ever created to comfort itself. We plan, we predict, we calculate, and when events unfold according to plan, we believe we are the masters. But one small disruption, an illness, a loss, an unexpected turn, and the illusion collapses. We are reminded that we have never truly controlled anything beyond ourselves. The modern world, with its technology and speed, has only deepened this illusion. We can see the news from across the planet, command devices with our voices, forecast futures through data. And yet, paradoxically, the more control we gain, the more anxious we become. For each new power exposes countless new uncertainties. Seneca warned, the more things we desire to control, the more we become controlled by them. The moment we try to rule everything, we become servants to everything. To recognize our limits is not weakness, it is wisdom. To accept that some things lie beyond our reach is the first step toward tranquility. When we cease trying to shape others, cease resisting the natural flow of life, we begin to hear nature's voice. Quiet, patient, inviting us to live in harmony. The Stoic, in Seneca's eyes, is not cold or detached, but one who knows when to hold on and when to let go. He understands that every event belongs to a greater order, and if he looks closely, he can see the reason of the universe shining even in the smallest misfortune. The world is not against us. It simply moves by its own rhythm. What we call tragedy is often the ego's refusal to agree with reality. One day, when all seems to fall apart, we may recall Seneca's words. He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary. Life itself is not cruel. It is only the human mind, demanding total control, that turns the world into a burden. Picture a small boat at sea. The winds may rise, the waves may swell, yet the wise sailor does not fight the ocean. He adjusts his sails. He does not command the wind. That is the image Seneca sought to carve into our minds. The free person is the one who knows how to let go. And perhaps letting go is not abandonment, but a deeper form of acceptance. The recognition that we are part of the current, not the pilot of it. In that surrender, we discover the subtlest form of liberation, freedom from the illusion of power itself. Submit to fate, but direct your will. Seneca. This is the harmony Seneca envisioned, when will and destiny no longer collide, but move together two tides of the same ocean. And once we understand that nothing beyond ourselves can truly be mastered, Seneca leads us to the one thing that is wholly ours: time. Not wealth, not fame, but the passing moments themselves, the only possession that once wasted can never be regained. Part 5. Time as the only true possession. Seneca left us one of the most profound meditations ever written on time, De brevitate vitae, on the shortness of life. In it he wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Life is not short," he says, "it is merely that we squander most of it. In a world intoxicated by the illusion of control, we forget that there is only one thing that truly belongs to us: time. Everything else can be taken: wealth, status, love, health. But time is given to each of us with perfect fairness, and yet it is what we waste most carelessly." Seneca saw the paradox clearly. Those who guard their money, their reputation, their possessions with vigilance often make no effort to guard their time, the only treasure that cannot be regained. We calculate every coin, but spend hours, days, and years on what is worthless: needless worries, hollow conversations, plans that never come to fruition. He wrote, "Men are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are the most wasteful of all." For Seneca, time was not the ticking of a clock. It was the substance of life itself, the raw material from which the soul carves meaning. We do not live by breathing, but by using time well. A day lived without awareness is a day already dead. An hour lived in full consciousness is worth more than years lost to distraction. To the Stoics, awareness of time was a moral discipline. When one knows that life is brief, one lives more honestly, more simply, wasting no strength on the trivial. Death, in Seneca's philosophy, is not tragedy, but reminder, the quiet teacher whispering that everything is temporary, and therefore every moment sacred. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. We act as if immortal when we crave, yet as fragile mortals when we fear. What contradiction! We plan for distant futures that may never come, yet tremble before the only certainty there is, death." Seneca did not teach despair. He taught presence. To live fully in the present, that alone, he said, is truly ours. The past is sealed, the future unborn. Only the present flows through our hands, and with every passing moment a part of the soul is spent. And yet we live as if we will live forever. We postpone dreams until tomorrow. We delay love. We delay living itself. We wait for the perfect moment to begin, and that moment never arrives. Then one morning we awaken to find that time is gone. Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." Nothing estranges us from ourselves more than living in an imagined future. When we chase what has not yet come, we abandon what is here. The one who knows how to live is the one who knows how to pause, to look around, to breathe, to feel the light. At its deepest level, Stoic philosophy is indistinguishable from the art of living slowly, living mindfully, living wholly. Imagine holding an hourglass in your hands. Each grain of sand that falls is a minute of your life. Most of us watch it drift away, without realizing that what is vanishing is ourselves. Seneca invites us to look at each falling grain, not with fear, but with reverence. When we know that the flow is finite, every act gains meaning. A glance, a conversation, an hour of reading, each becomes sacred because it will never return. Time, for Seneca, is the truest measure of wisdom. Those who use it well live long, even if their years are few. Those who waste it die early, even if they reach old age. Life is long, he wrote, if you know how to use it. It is not advice, but awakening. We can extend life not by years, but by the depth of our awareness. Modern life has dulled our sense of real time. We live by clocks, by calendars, by the rhythm of productivity. Yet forget that the passing of time is not mere scheduling, but the transformation of the soul itself. Each moment not only departs, but also leaves its imprint upon the universe. Seneca taught that we should give time to what time cannot erode, to learning, to love, to self-understanding, to wisdom, for only these things are immortal within the finite. He wrote, "Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes. Every postponement is a theft of time, of life, of soul. Consider this. If someone stole a few coins from us, we would be angry. Yet when we ourselves steal years from our own lives through thoughtless living, we feel nothing." Seneca's philosophy is not severe. It is simple: to live aware, to live knowing that one is alive. Perhaps the true tragedy is not death itself, but to spend a lifetime without ever truly living. Seneca saw in this the quiet sorrow of mankind, souls running endlessly, never knowing why or where. And he ended his reflection with a voice both firm and tender. "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. Begin now. See each day as an entire life. For if we live today completely, then even if tomorrow never comes, we have already lived enough." The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. Seneca. And when we have learned to cherish each passing moment, Seneca leads us toward the final lesson, the lesson of death, which most of humanity tries to flee. For only by facing death with calmness can we finally understand the true value of every living breath. Part 6. The Serenity of Mortality. Seneca once wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." In all his writings, no theme runs deeper, calmer, or more humane than his reflection on death. While most people spend their lives avoiding even the thought of it, Seneca regarded death as a silent teacher, the only one capable of showing us what it means to truly live. Death, for Seneca, is not an ending, but a natural completion of the cycle. Night does not destroy the day. It fulfills it. Winter does not kill the earth. It allows it to rest, to be reborn. He wrote, "Death is not an evil." What is it then? The one law mankind cannot escape. Death, then, is not to be cursed, but to be met with quiet reverence. In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca spoke of his friends who met death not with tears, but with serenity. He advised Lucilius, "Rehearse death, not with melancholy, but through dying in small ways every day, dying to ambition, to fear, to attachment, so that when real death arrives, there is nothing left to lose." The Stoics believed that only through an understanding of death can one truly learn to live. Fear of death breeds clinging, and clinging is the beginning of paralysis. When we fear loss, we cease to love. When we fear endings, we no longer begin. Seneca did not preach pessimism. He preached confrontation. Only by facing our limit do we find true freedom. He wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." Live, he said, as though you have reached the end already, and delay nothing. For in awareness of finitude, life gains clarity, stillness, and depth. In truth, Seneca spoke of death not to dwell on dying, but to teach the art of letting go. Letting go of small things, an event, a person, an emotion, becomes a daily rehearsal for the soul. Each release is not a loss, but an expansion, for only in emptiness can we receive the fullness of life. Death, to Seneca, is the most just gift of nature. None are spared, none are favored. And within that perfect equality lies the purity of the natural order. To curse death is to resist the sacred law that made life possible. He wrote, "To be born is to begin to die." From the moment of birth, death walks beside us, not as an enemy, but as a patient companion, reminding us to cherish every breath. Seneca himself knew loss, exile, betrayal, and finally the imperial command to take his own life. Yet he met death as a philosopher meets his final lesson. History tells us that as his veins were opened, Seneca continued to speak calmly with his friends about philosophy and the peace of the soul. No cry, no bitterness. Death in his hands became a ritual of freedom. The Stoics saw the fear of death as humanity's deepest affliction. From that fear, every other sorrow is born. We fear losing status because we equate it with a kind of death. We fear losing loved ones because we refuse impermanence. We fear time because it reminds us that we are moving toward the inevitable. But to see death as Seneca did, as part of nature, is to understand that death does not destroy life. It sanctifies it. Death gives meaning to love because love is finite. It gives worth to each sunrise because we know we will not see infinite dawns, and it makes gratitude the root of wisdom. Seneca wrote, "He lives badly who does not know how to die well." To die well requires no ritual, no heroism, only a tranquil mind, a soul that has lived completely, owing nothing to itself. He who knows how to die has fulfilled life in every moment, not waiting for the final hour to understand its worth. Perhaps what makes Seneca's vision so profound is his ability to turn the most feared of all things into the gentlest of truths. In his voice, death is no longer an abyss, but a doorway into peace. He offers no speculations about what lies beyond, for Stoicism does not seek comfort in mystery. What matters is this: if there is something beyond, we shall meet it with the same calmness with which we met life itself. Death is the wish of some, the relief of many, and the end of all. Seneca, when we cease to fear the end, we begin to live. Seen with a clear eye, death is not darkness. It is the stillness of light. And once the mind is freed from the fear of dying, Seneca leads us to another source of bondage, our attachment to material things. For even those unafraid of death often imprison themselves within their possessions. forgetting that true freedom lies not in what we own, but in the ability to live lightly among heavy things. Part 7. The Weight of Possessions. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." A short sentence, sharp as a blade, cutting through one of humanity's oldest illusions, that happiness can be purchased, that peace is found in what we possess. For Seneca, material wealth was never evil in itself, but dependence on it was the most dangerous sickness of the soul. Once the mind binds itself to possessions, freedom is lost. We cease to be masters of our belongings and become their keepers, slaves to what we own. Seneca himself was among the wealthiest men in Rome. He lived in villas, held power, and commanded influence. Yet in his Letters to Lucilius, he wrote with the voice of one warning himself, "Wealth is the slave of the wise, and the master of the fool." This was not false modesty spoken from comfort, but the hard-won insight of a soul that had tasted attachment and understood the true cost of freedom. In Rome, as in our own age, people were obsessed with accumulation. The more they owned, the more they desired, and in that pursuit they called themselves conquerors, when in truth they were being conquered by greed. Seneca saw that material abundance often accompanies spiritual poverty, for one can preserve wealth only by sacrificing time, peace, and presence, things no money can ever buy back. He wrote, "A man is not poor if he can still laugh." The one who can still laugh, even when stripped of everything, is the richest of all, because that laughter springs from the feeling of not being bound. To Seneca, only he who is light enough to lose everything and still stand truly knows peace. Wealth, rightly used, is a tool of virtue, but when it becomes an end in itself, it turns the soul into a prisoner. We believe possessions bring safety, yet it is attachment to them that breeds fear. The more we have, the more we dread losing it. The tighter we cling, the more anxious we grow. Seneca wrote, "No possession is secure without fear." And when fear enters, freedom, the soul of Stoicism, begins to fade. Observe the cycle. When poor, we think happiness lies in abundance. Once rich, we discover it lies in simplicity. Seneca called it the comedy of fate, yet it is really the lesson of nature. Nature requires little to exist, rivers only to flow, trees only the sun, and man only enough to live, not excess to destroy himself. He wrote, "Nature's wants are small, the demands of opinion are boundless. Within each of us dwell two selves, one simple, who knows contentment, and one grasping, who tries to fill the soul's emptiness with things. The Stoic lives from the first, the part that honors limits, that bows before the order of nature. For within those limits lies infinite freedom." Seneca never urged renunciation of all things, only that we refuse to let things define us. He said, "If you have, use it as if you had it not." One may live among wealth, yet remain light, so long as he remembers that possessions are not part of the soul. He likened greed to disease. The more it is fed, the stronger it grows. The more it is indulged, the hungrier it becomes. Only when we stop nourishing it with illusion does it begin to fade. Then the soul returns to its natural state, clear, steady, untouched by anything outside itself. A poor man can be happy if he cherishes small things. A rich man can be miserable if he fears the loss of every coin. It depends entirely on how we weigh what we hold. Seneca saw the great irony. Many die not from lack, but from excess, overburdened by responsibility, by anxiety, by ambition. Their souls sink beneath the weight of what they call possessions. The Stoic, by contrast, chooses to live lightly. He does not reject wealth, but remains ever ready to let it go. He treats loss as nature's lesson, a test of his freedom. For only when one can lose without trembling can one claim to live in liberty. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. Seneca. That line resounds like a bell. When we fear loss, we act as if life were endless, postponing joy, love, and presence. When we desire, we act as if immortal, seeking to possess all things, forgetting that time is slipping away. And at the crossing of those two illusions, the human soul is crushed. Seneca, calm and lucid, invites us to step out of that cycle, to return to the lightness of knowing what is enough. To be rich is not to have much, but to need little. To be poor is not to lack, but to be ruled. And freedom, the highest aim of Stoic life, arrives when we can finally say, I can lose everything and still be myself. Once we have released the burden of possessions, Seneca leads us to the heart of the Stoic journey, the power of reason. For if wealth belongs to the outer world, then reason is the fire within, the single light capable of guiding us through the darkness of desire, fear, and pain, part. The strength of reason, Seneca once said, reason shapes and controls all things. It itself is not subject to control. In Stoic philosophy, reason, logos, is not merely a tool of thought. It is the order of the cosmos, the sacred flame linking the human soul to the essence of nature. To live according to reason is not to grow cold, but to live in harmony with the highest law of the universe. After learning to love fate, to understand desire, to release control, and to live lightly amid possessions, Seneca leads us to the summit of freedom, to live by reason. For if passion is the fire that burns, reason is the fire that illuminates. It can warm, it can guide, but it does not consume. Seneca wrote, live according to reason, everything else is slavery. To live apart from reason is a kind of bondage, not to another man, but to one's own emotions, instincts, and illusions. Reason, in Stoic thought, does not reject emotion. It governs emotion. The Stoic does not extinguish anger. He understands its source. He does not deny fear. He looks through it. Seneca believed that every feeling can be illuminated if we have the courage to pause and look with the eye of reason. In Letters to Lucilius Narodavitoius, he wrote, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. This was not only about fear, but about the power of reason to face imagination. Most of our suffering arises not from events themselves, but from the stories our minds tell about them. We are not pained by loss itself, but by the belief that loss is unjust. We do not fear death, but our idea of it. When we begin to see that difference, we cross from shadow into light, from the turmoil of emotion to the clarity of reason. Reason, as Seneca imagined it, is not rigid or cold. It is a flame that can love. True reason does not distance us from humanity. It draws us closer. The rational man does not despise others, for he sees that all people suffer from the same illusions and fears that he does. From this understanding arises compassion. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. Such kindness does not come from pity, but from philosophical insight, the recognition that we all share one spark of reason, one order of being. When reason awakens, the world appears transformed. Where others see chaos, the wise see pattern. Where others see loss, they see transformation. Where others see tragedy, they see a lesson." Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." Reason whispers the same truth. Most of human misery is the work of an untrained mind, not of fate. Reason does not make us divine. It helps us see things in their right proportions. An insult, a loss, a fear, all shrink when placed within the vastness of the cosmos. The rational man is no longer trapped by detail, for he perceives the whole. To him, every event is but a ripple upon the eternal sea of nature. Seneca called such a person sapiens, the wise man. Wisdom, for him, is not about knowing much, but about understanding the laws within oneself. Within every person lies a miniature universe, and reason is its central flame, the light that keeps that inner cosmos in balance. When the flame dims, the soul becomes chaotic. When it burns clear, life itself becomes harmonious. Seneca described reason as the pilot of the soul. Emotions are the winds, desire, the waves, circumstance, the sea. If the pilot sleeps, the ship strikes the rocks. But if the pilot is awake, steering by the current of nature, the ship will reach its shore, no matter how fierce the storm. Thus, reason is not rigid control, but the art of gentle guidance, firm yet fluid. The more one lives by reason, the freer one becomes from disturbance. There is no longer the need to choose between happiness and sorrow, victory or defeat, for both are seen as fleeting patterns within a greater motion. Reason does not erase emotion, it restores it to its rightful place, like water beneath fire, like earth beneath wind. When all returns to its order, the soul becomes again what it was meant to be, still, luminous, and whole. The wise man is content with his lot, whatever it be, without wishing for what he has not. Seneca, he who lives by reason no longer lives by endless desire, but by intelligent acceptance. He still acts, but acts consciously. He still loves, but loves without clinging. He still feels pain, but knows that pain too belongs to nature's design. For Seneca, reason is not a weapon to rule life, but a light to understand it. And when we understand, fear dissolves, for nothing is more terrifying than what we do not comprehend. Perhaps that is why Seneca's voice remained serene in every storm. He knew that no matter how the outer world collapses, the inner flame of reason cannot be extinguished. It is the immortal part of man, the one thing truly his own, and the bridge that joins this fragile soul to the infinite order of the universe. And when this flame has been kindled, Seneca teaches us how to keep it pure through the art of self-examination. For reason is strengthened only by daily reflection, when we dare to face ourselves in silence and see clearly what within us shines. and what still lingers in shadow. Part 9. The practice of reflection, Seneca once wrote, "Every night, before I go to sleep, I examine my entire day." This was not a ritual, but an act of intellectual freedom, for only by turning inward can one know whether he has lived by reason or been carried away by impulse. Reflection, meditatio, lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy. For Seneca, philosophy did not dwell in words, but in the act of thought itself. If the mind is not exercised, it weakens like an unused muscle. The wise man therefore spends each evening in conversation with his own soul, not to condemn, but to understand, to listen, to gently correct the direction of his mind. In Letters to Lucilius, he describes the habit. "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and measure my deeds and words." He asks himself, "What did I say today that was unnecessary? Did I grow angry without cause? Did I act against reason? And above all, did I live as one who is still learning how to live?" That is the essence of Seneca's philosophy. Life is never complete. It is always a process of learning. As long as you live, keep learning how to live, he reminds us. Each day is a lesson, each mistake an invitation to move closer to peace. Thus, reflection is not meant to produce regret, but to turn errors into teachers. We often think reflection is stillness, but in truth, it is an act of courage. To look directly at oneself is the hardest task of all. It is far easier to judge others than to face the shadows within. But Seneca believed that only by confronting the inner world can one cleanse it. As the blacksmith fears no fire, the Stoic fears no truth. He knows that the flame of awareness, though it burns, also purifies. In Seneca's eyes, reflection is inseparable from virtue, for virtue is not a set of rules, but honesty in every thought. He who is not honest with himself, even if he lives outwardly with honor, is lost. Seneca wrote, "I shall keep constant watch over myself, and, most usefully, shall put each day up for review." Life, he said, cannot be fixed in the future. It can only be adjusted in the present day. Seneca's nightly reflection was never mournful. It brought him lightness, because each day ended not with regret, but with understanding. Like a sailor checking the wind before nightfall, he would not wait until the ship drifted off course to correct its path. In Stoicism, there is a principle called prosoch, attentive awareness or continual vigilance. Reflection is the practice that maintains prosoch. It keeps the mind awake, free from habit, safe from being ruled by emotion. Seneca saw reflection as the mirror of the soul, in which every motive and act becomes visible. He who never looks into the mirror will soon forget his own face. He who never looks into his soul will soon forget his own reason. We can imagine Seneca, in the quiet of night, sitting alone beside the glow of a small lamp. No noise, no audience, only thought. He moves through the events of the day, not to accuse himself, but to see himself. It is in such nights, perhaps, that his deepest insights were born, not from knowledge, but from awareness. The modern mind, spinning in the machinery of work and technology, has nearly lost this art. We record our schedules, but not the movements of the soul. We measure achievements, but not the subtle shifts within our hearts. And so we grow exhausted without understanding why. Seneca would tell us, "You do not need more. You need to be still and to see what you already have." Reflection is an act of reason, but also an act of kindness. When we look at ourselves without hatred, seeking only to understand, we practice compassion for ourselves and therefore for others. He who can forgive his own weakness will not be harsh with the world. He who understands his own darkness will not judge the shadows of another. Seneca believed that if every person examined his soul each day, the world itself would grow gentler. For when we take responsibility for our inner lives, we no longer blame the outer world. Philosophy, in its truest sense, begins with self-scrutiny, not criticism of others. And like all Stoic disciplines, reflection is not aimed at perfection, but at progress. No one is wholly light nor wholly dark, but he who reflects, even a little each day, moves steadily toward illumination. To study philosophy is to learn to die to our faults every day. Mama Seneca, each moment of reflection is a small death of error and a rebirth of awareness. Through these quiet deaths, the soul matures, just as a tree grows by shedding its leaves. Thus, reflection is not merely thought. It is a ritual of purification, the breath of philosophy, the meeting point where reason and the soul touch in silence. And perhaps there is no night more beautiful than the night we dare to look into ourselves, and do so without fear. Having learned to illuminate the inner world, Seneca turns the lesson outward, to the choice of companionship. For even the strongest mind is shaped by the souls that surround it. Thus, he teaches that walking with the wise, those who make us better, is an essential part of the path to wisdom. Part X. The company of the wise, Seneca once wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." In a world crowded with noise, emotion, and desire, Seneca understood that the human mind is never entirely alone. It always resonates, always takes shape through the souls it touches. Thus, the choice of one's companions for him was not a social matter. It was a philosophical act. Seneca said, "When we spend time with the wise, we borrow their virtues." This is no magic, but the natural law of influence. Just as iron near a magnet becomes magnetized, the soul absorbs the qualities of the souls it encounters. If we dwell among the shallow, our minds grow thin. If we dwell among the deep, our thoughts learn to be still. Seneca did not preach isolation. He knew that man cannot grow in absolute solitude. Yet he also knew that not all company uplifts. He wrote, "Without a companion, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods." But he warned as well, "You must not copy the bad simply because they are many, nor despise the good because they are few." Here Seneca reached a delicate truth of ethics. We need others to see ourselves, yet we must be strong enough not to dissolve within them. Philosophical friendship, as he envisioned it, is a union of souls, two minds striving toward virtue, sharpening and reflecting each other. In his Letters to Lucilius, Seneca modeled this friendship. He did not write as a master addressing a pupil, but as a fellow traveler on the same path. He confessed, "I am not a wise man, and I will not be one, but I am a lover of wisdom, and I invite you to love it with me." That line captures the essence of Stoicism. Philosophy is not perfection, but a shared journey toward clarity. When we walk with the wise, Seneca taught, we learn not from their words alone, but from their way of living. They teach us through calmness under insult, through gratitude amid praise, through humility in success. This is living philosophy. No speeches, no slogans, only example. He wrote, "Choose someone whose way of life, as well as words, have won your approval." In a world filled with proclamations, conduct remains the truest philosophy. The Stoic did not believe in eloquence without evidence. He believed that wisdom must be verified by life. Seneca warned, too, of companions who weaken the soul. Nothing, however, is so damaging to good character as the company you keep. To live among the resentful is to learn resentment, among the deceitful to forget honesty. The soul, like water, takes the shape of the vessel it fills. To choose a friend, therefore, is to choose the moral climate of one's mind. Yet Seneca was not an elitist. He did not say, "Avoid the bad," but rather, "Be near the good, so you may learn how to help the bad." His philosophy was not separation from humanity, but a deeper love for it. He believed that once we are strengthened, we can become a light for those still lost in shadow. Friendship, then, is not merely where we receive, it is where we give. A true friend, in Seneca's thought, is both mirror and reminder. When we stray, he does not condemn. He reflects us with eyes clear enough for us to see ourselves again. Such friendship needs no vows, no contracts, for it is bound by virtue, not advantage. And within the quiet understanding of such kindred souls, man finds what wealth and power can never offer, the serenity of being known and illuminated. Seneca wrote, "One who seeks friendship for its own sake, not for any advantage, will never lack friends." When friendship is free of transaction, it ceases to depend on luck. It becomes a bond of souls, sustained only by sincere presence. Imagine a winter night. Two friends sitting by a fire, speaking little, the silence itself warm. That is the image of Stoic friendship. Simple, unadorned, yet strong enough to sustain a lifetime. He who has made a fair compact with poverty is rich. Seneca. He who can live simply, who cherishes good souls around him, is truly wealthy. Not because he owns much, but because he has found what cannot be bought, the harmony of kindred spirits. In a world made lonely by excess, Seneca's voice still echoes, "Seek the souls that make you better, not because they instruct you, but because they remind you of who you truly are." And once Seneca has shown us the strength of friendship and the influence of noble minds, he leads us further to the lesson of endurance. For only in hardship is virtue tested, and only through trial does man learn the quiet heroism of the soul. That is the teaching of the next part, the silent heroism of endurance. Part of Being, the quiet heroism of endurance. Seneca once said, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave." That single sentence distills the core of Stoic philosophy. Virtue is never measured by words, but by the strength to remain standing when the world falls apart. After speaking of friendship, Seneca turns us inward again, to confront not others, but life itself. For to him, life was never meant to be a smooth passage. It is a sequence of collisions, and each collision reveals the true substance of our soul. Seneca believed that suffering is not a tragedy, but the forge of virtue. He wrote on Providence, "No one can be brave who has never known misfortune. Just as steel cannot harden without fire, the soul cannot mature without trials. The Stoic looks upon adversity differently from the world. To him, suffering does not come to punish, but to instruct. Every loss is a lesson, every wound a summons. Life is not an enemy. It is a stern, but just teacher." Seneca wrote, "The good man will endure all misfortunes in the belief that they are meant for him, and that in enduring them he is fulfilling the law of nature. The good man endures because he believes his trials are given to him, not as cruelty, but as training. Endurance, therefore, is not weak submission, but strong acceptance. Acceptance as an act of mastery, not defeat. If any image defines the Stoic spirit, it is the flame burning in the storm. The flame does not scream, does not resist. It simply continues to shine. It does not fight the wind, but learns to burn with it, steadfast, silent, unyielding. Seneca himself knew hardship well. Exile to Corsica, loss of position, slander, betrayal, and finally, the imperial order to end his own life. Yet through it all he did not curse his fate. He wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." In that sentence lies his unshakable faith that suffering is the condition of growth. Modern man flees discomfort, fearing pain, fatigue, loneliness. But in avoiding these, he loses endurance, and with it, the depth of the soul. Seneca knew, strength does not come from being unbroken, but from rising after the break. Endurance, in his view, is a moral act, not because it makes us more powerful, but because it reveals the quality of the soul. When life is easy, anyone can appear kind, composed, courageous. But when the world turns against us, when we lose, when we are betrayed, only then do we discover who we truly are. Seneca wrote, "Misfortune is virtue's opportunity." For Seneca, endurance was not stoic hardness, but intelligent resilience. The Stoic does not deny pain, he observes it. He does not say, "I do not suffer." He says, "I suffer, and yet I stand." In that standing, there is virtue, there is dignity, there is light. He likened endurance to the labor of a quiet warrior, unseen, unpraised, fighting his battle within. Others may see calm on the surface, not knowing the struggle it takes to keep that calm alive. This is quiet heroism, the heroism without medals, born of honesty with oneself. In his later letters, Seneca told Lucilius, "What is harder, to bear misfortune bravely, or to avoid it altogether? It is better to conquer hardship than to be spared from it. To face and transcend trial is nobler than to be sheltered from it. The one who avoids pain lives safely. The one who endures learns the meaning of freedom." The Stoic does not seek suffering, but he does not fear it. For he understands every hardship, seen through the lens of reason, becomes material for perfection. He views adversity as the craftsman views the hammer and anvil, instruments by which the soul is shaped. And then, one day, the one who has endured long enough ceases to be ruled by circumstance. He no longer asks, "Why did this happen to me?" He says instead, "This happened for me." That small change of one word is the entire revolution of Stoicism. Seneca concluded, "Difficulty strengthens the mind, as labor does the body. If the body needs exertion to grow strong, the soul needs endurance to grow wise. Thus, suffering is no longer the enemy, it becomes the most patient teacher. A man who is not afraid of pain will never be conquered by it." Seneca. In endurance, man finds a power no one can take away, the power of knowing that everything can be lost except one's dignity. And in the silence of steadfastness, the soul becomes free, not because it escapes pain, but because it has learned to live in harmony with it. When virtue has been tempered in the fire of hardship, Seneca turns his gaze toward another test: fame. For there are some who cannot be broken by suffering, yet are quietly destroyed by praise. He would show us why glory, so bright to the world, can become a golden chain around the soul. Part 13. The vanity of fame. Seneca once wrote, "No one confers more honor on us than we confer on others." Simple, yet piercing, a truth that unsettled the Roman world, built as it was upon glory and rank. In an age obsessed with triumphs and titles, Seneca dared to say that fame is an illusion, and that the one who chases it is merely pursuing his own shadow. He knew the seduction of that light. He had stood in the heart of imperial Rome as counselor to Nero, powerful, wealthy, admired. But at the center of glory, he saw its quiet decay. He wrote, "Fame is but the breath of the people. It is given and withdrawn by the same lips." To Seneca, fame was the subtlest form of slavery. When we live to be praised, we surrender our soul to others. Each compliment or criticism, each nod or frown, becomes a chain pulling us upward or dragging us down. We think fame measures worth, yet in truth it measures our dependence. Seneca asked Lucilius, "Do you know what makes men greedy for applause? Their own uncertainty about what they are worth." When we do not trust our own value, we seek confirmation from the crowd. When we forget who we are, we need the world's gaze to define us, and from that moment we become prisoners of perception. In Letters to Lucilius, he compared fame to an echo in a cave. The louder you shout, the farther your voice travels from its source. So it is with reputation. The more one is celebrated, the further one drifts from one's essence. He wrote, "He who seeks fame loses his peace." For fame demands endless performance, and the soul cannot live forever on a stage. Seneca saw this vividly in Nero, the young emperor intoxicated by adoration, craving to be loved, applauded, and he knew, the one who lives by applause will die by forgetfulness. From that insight, Seneca shaped his philosophy of inner freedom, the only freedom that no crowd can give or take away. The Stoic did not reject fame. He merely put it in its rightful place. Fame may come or go. If it arrives as the natural fruit of virtue, one need not refuse it. But if one acts for fame, virtue is already lost. He wrote, "What difference does it make how much is said about you if you say nothing to yourself?" To Seneca, fame was a trivial preoccupation of souls not yet anchored within. It is like the wind, impossible to grasp or keep, yet people build their lives chasing it. The Stoic chooses instead the silent, rooted life. He knows that the noise of the crowd cannot nourish the soul. Only awareness can. Seneca wrote, Withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make you a better man. This is not a call to isolation, but to withdraw from empty echoes. For when silence returns, the inner voice, long muffled by applause, can finally be heard. Some might ask, if we do not seek recognition, what gives life meaning? Seneca would answer, do what is right, and let the world say what it will. He never denied the value of public action. He only severed action from the hunger to be seen. He taught that the one who acts for justice, for truth, for integrity, needs no spotlight, for he carries the light within. The Stoics lived quietly, yet their influence endures across centuries, not because they wished to be remembered, but because they lived lives worthy of remembrance. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who is remembered, but the life that was lived well." Fame fades, virtue remains. Perhaps Seneca's lesson is not, do not seek fame, but do not let fame find you before you are ready. For when it comes to an unsteady mind, fame becomes poison. But when it meets a steady soul, it is like moonlight on still water, beautiful yet unable to disturb the depths. The mind that is calm sees no difference between obscurity and fame. Seneca, to the tranquil mind, obscurity and glory are the same. Such a person no longer needs the world's applause to know he exists. In that silence, Seneca found the only freedom that cannot be taken away, the serenity of a soul that knows its own worth. And when one has transcended the blinding light of fame, Seneca leads us into another darkness, the realm of pain and loss. For no matter how strong the reason, the human heart must still learn how to walk through sorrow without drowning in it. That is the lesson of the next part, the mirror of suffering. Part 9, the mirror of suffering. Seneca once wrote, "Fire tests gold, and adversity tests the brave." But to him, it was not only gold that needed fire. The human soul, too, must be tested to become clear. If fame is the mirror of illusion, then suffering is the mirror of truth. In pain, we see ourselves most honestly, without masks, without roles, without adornment, only the bare essence of the soul. Seneca knew loss intimately, career, position, friends, and finally his own life. Yet he bore it without bitterness. He wrote in Letters to Lucilius, "No evil is great, which is the last evil of all. Not the voice of despair, but the calm of a man who understood that pain is not a curse. It is part of the natural order." In Stoic philosophy, suffering is not to be avoided, but to be studied. Seneca believed that if we listen closely, pain teaches more than success ever could. He wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Thus, suffering is not the enemy. It is the strictest of teachers. The Stoic does not silence pain. He converses with it. For in the quiet voice of pain are lessons that ease and comfort can never reveal. Through suffering, we come to understand patience, compassion, and the impermanence of all things. Seneca said, "A wise man is content with his fate, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." Pain in this light is not punishment, but a portion of fate to be loved. If amor fati, love of fate, is the heart of Stoicism, then loving pain is its highest expression. Seneca often reminded us, no one escapes suffering. The poor suffer from lack, the rich from fear of loss. The young suffer because they do not yet have, the old because they must soon leave. Life, he said, is a school of loss. But only those who learn well in that school understand. Loss takes nothing that truly belongs to us. In On Providence, he asked, "Why should I not face what all men have faced before me?" He saw suffering not as exception, but as the common law of humanity. And when we recognize something as universal, we no longer call it unfair. For Seneca, suffering was the mirror that reflects courage. When life is kind, virtue is easy to claim. But when we reach the edge, when we lose, when we are betrayed, when we face death, then the soul sees its own dignity. As still water shows no depth without wind, the soul shows no calm without storm. Seneca never taught denial of emotion. He wrote, "It is better to conquer our grief than to deceive it." The Stoic allows himself to feel sorrow, but does not let sorrow rule. Tears do not weaken the soul, he said, if they fall in awareness. In one letter to Lucilius, he spoke of mourning a loved one. "Let tears fall, but let them fall without bitterness." A conscious tear lightens the heart, for in that moment man no longer resists fate, he moves with it. The Stoic believed that through understanding suffering, we learn to understand others. Compassion is not born of intellect, but of a heart that has been wounded and awakened. When we suffer, we no longer judge. We simply see that every person wrestles with their own darkness. Pain turns the critic into the compassionate. Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." Seen in this light, pain is not an abyss, but a doorway inward. Beyond pain lies peace, not because the world has changed, but because we have. Pain is either endurable or not. If endurable, bear it. If not, it will end soon. Seneca. A line so simple, it feels like a smile. If pain can be endured, endure it. If it cannot, it will pass. For nothing in the universe is eternal, not even suffering. Beneath its Stoic logic lies a profound comfort, that no pain lasts forever, but growth does. Seneca saw in pain not an adversary, but a teacher of the art of patience. When we endure in silence, we cease to be victims and become apprentices of the soul. It is the quiet heroism he cherished, heroism that needs no witnesses. In the end, suffering does not come to destroy us. It comes to open us. And when we learn to look into it as into a mirror, we no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, we whisper, "Thank you for showing me who I am." And once we have learned to gaze deeply into suffering, Seneca leads us to the next lesson, the art of governing emotion. For pain begins in feeling, and only when we understand the nature of emotion can we truly live in the freedom of reason. Part 4. The art of emotional mastery. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." It is one of his most luminous truths that much of our pain does not come from what happens, but from how we imagine it. And within that insight lies one of the greatest disciplines of Stoic philosophy, the art of mastering emotion, not to extinguish the heart, but to let heart and reason breathe in the same rhythm. Seneca never wished men to become cold. He understood that emotion is the natural weather of the soul, as wind is to the sea, as rain is to the earth. But he also knew, without reason, that weather becomes a storm. He wrote on anger. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. To the Stoic, emotion is not an enemy, but a signal. Like lightning across the sky, it reveals where the soul is unsettled. The Stoic does not try to silence the thunder. He learns to read it. For behind every emotion lies a mistaken judgment, a thought not yet refined by reason. Thus, emotional mastery begins not with suppression, but with understanding. Seneca wrote, "No man is angry at what he does not believe to be an injury." Emotion arises not from events, but from beliefs about events. If you believe you have been wronged, you feel anger. If you believe you have been tested, you feel calm. You cannot always change the world, but you can change the way you see it. And in that shift lies the freedom of the soul. He compared the mind to a gatekeeper. Each time an emotion knocks, the guard must ask, "Who are you? Do you bring harm or help?" If it is gratitude, compassion, or joy, let it in. If it is rage, envy, or fear, observe from a distance, without banishing, yet without surrender. Emotion, said Seneca, is the child within the soul, to be guided, not punished. To be angry is to be out of control of one's own mind. And to lose control of the mind is to lose the lamp of reason. He wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." A pause, just a breath, gives reason room to speak. That space between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. In that stillness, we regain the power to choose. The Stoic trains the heart not by avoiding feeling, but by watching it closely. Like a sailor amid rough seas, he cannot command the waves to cease, but he can hold the rudder steady. Emotion is the wave, reason the helm. If the helm is weak, the boat capsizes. If strong, it rides through the storm. In De Ira, on anger, Seneca analyzed rage not to destroy it, but to decode its structure. He saw that every destructive emotion springs from a desire to control the uncontrollable. We rage because others do not act as we wish. We fear because the future will not obey our plans. We envy because we think fairness must follow our own design. All such feelings fade when we accept the limits of our power, when we embrace the imperfection of the world. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Courage is not only the strength to face danger, it is the courage to face our emotions without fear. For nothing is more daunting than confronting the battlefield within, where instinct and reason wrestle for command. When we understand emotion, we begin to love even our moments of weakness. We stop condemning ourselves for fear, sorrow, or tenderness, for we know these are but ripples on the surface, while deep below the lake of reason remains still and clear. He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. Seneca. The greatest victory is not over the world, but over oneself. When emotion is understood and guided, it ceases to enslave. It becomes an ally. Joy returns, yet without frenzy. Sorrow remains, but now softened. We are no longer dragged by emotion, but walk beside it. Two old companions who finally understand one another. Seneca also wrote, "The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. Only the mind disciplined by reflection can live fully in the present, unbound by the past, unburdened by the future. It breathes freely in this single, luminous moment. That is the Stoic art of emotional mastery, not the freezing of the heart, but the harmony of heart and reason, steady, lucid, and serene. And once the soul has learned to steer its inner storms, Seneca invites us to the next lesson, the art of simplicity. For only a quiet mind can recognize that true happiness does not dwell in the abundance of things, but in the fullness of having little. Part 15. The Elegance of Simplicity. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In a world growing ever more complicated, his words still strike like a blade at the heart of modern restlessness. We build our lives around more possessions, more connections, more experiences, and in that abundance we often find ourselves impoverished. Seneca understood that simplicity is not deprivation, but the highest form of freedom. When we need little, we are bound by little. When we depend on nothing, we fear no loss. To live simply is not to withdraw from the world, but to dwell within it without being consumed by it. He wrote in Letters to Lucilius, "If you live according to nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich." That sentence is a manifesto for an awakened life. For Seneca, nature is the greatest teacher of philosophy. Nature never needs extravagance. The sun rises without fanfare. The ocean is vast yet silent about its depth. Everything truly great is quietly simple. It is only when man strays from nature that he begins to worship complexity, believing that the value of life increases with the weight of its ornaments. Seneca did not ask us to abandon comfort, but to be willing to part with it. He advised Lucilius, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, not to punish the body, but to remind the mind that happiness requires so little. When we learn to live with less, we stop fearing poverty. And when we no longer fear poverty, we are no longer enslaved by wealth." Simplicity, to Seneca, is the most refined expression of intelligence. A simple person has nothing to prove. They need no applause, no grandeur, no performance. They live like water, clear, soft, yet strong enough to carve through stone. He wrote, "A great man is great in little things, for it is in the smallest details that the truth of character is revealed." To the Stoics, to live simply is to live rationally. Reason is by nature clean, uncluttered, and transparent. The simpler our life, the more clearly we see. Complexity clouds the mind. Simplicity restores sight. The more tangled a man's desires, the farther he drifts from himself. The simpler he becomes, the nearer he draws to peace. Seneca wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That line captures the heart of all inner philosophy, for men are not tormented by what they lack, but by the endless craving within. Simplicity is the antidote. It cleanses the mind of excess and reveals a soul light and lucid. On the Happy Life, he wrote, "The happy man is content with his present lot, no matter what it is, and is reconciled to his circumstances." Contentment is not passivity. It is intelligent acceptance, the understanding that happiness is born not of events, but of perception. One of Seneca's favorite images is that of the wise traveler who carries light. He brings little, for all that truly matters travels within. A simple mind is agile, equally at home in palace or hut, calm in both fortune and loss. That, to Seneca, is the ultimate measure of freedom. Modern voices speak much of minimalism, but for Seneca, simplicity is not a lifestyle. It is the natural state of a soul that understands. When understanding deepens, wanting less comes naturally. We speak less, desire less, compare less, and fear less. Not because we reject life, but because we have learned sufficiency. And in that sufficiency, we rediscover what was lost in the chase for more, serenity. A morning cup of tea, a windless afternoon, an old book, such things in the light of philosophy become symbols of the wise life. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Seneca. True happiness is to savor the moment, unshackled from worry about what's to come. It is not merely advice for slower living, but a philosophical revelation. Only the soul that has simplified itself can inhabit time fully. Simplicity does not make life smaller. It makes the soul wide enough to hold all of life. In the stillness of simplicity, all things return to their rightful place. And within that stillness, we lose nothing. We only lose our illusions, having found nobility in simplicity. Seneca then leads us to a deeper grace, the art of gratitude. For when a person has learned to live with enough, only then can they truly feel thankful, not because they have much, but because they see that everything they have is a gift of nature. Part 16th, The Grace of Gratitude. Seneca once wrote, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart." To him, gratitude was not mere courtesy or sentiment. It was a philosophical act, the mark of a soul that has matured enough to see the world through understanding, not entitlement. Once a person learns simplicity, they begin to realize that life is filled with gifts constantly given. Morning light, breath, companionship, the chance to learn, to love, even to suffer, all are benefits. But when the mind is clouded by desire, it forgets these gifts. It sees only what is missing, not what is present. And in that blindness, gratitude, the foundation of happiness, quietly fades from our lives. In De Beneficiis, on benefits, Seneca wrote, "He who receives a benefit with gratitude repays the first installment on his debt." For a favor is not measured by material exchange, but by recognition. Ingratitude is not the failure to repay, but the failure to perceive the gift at all. To Seneca, gratitude is a form of intelligence. Only a clear mind can perceive the intricate web that connects us to everything. Only a wise heart recognizes that nothing we possess is truly our own, that we live by air, by earth, by others, by chance, by lessons disguised as pain. And when we see this, we stop complaining. We begin to see that even suffering can be a blessing because it reveals our strength. He said, "The ungrateful man blames the gods for his misfortunes. The wise man thanks them for his trials." This is not theology, but attitude. The world never promises ease, only the opportunity to grow. Gratitude is the ability to recognize that opportunity even in what we did not wish for. In Stoic philosophy, gratitude does not depend on circumstance. The poor man can be grateful that he breathes, learns, and loves. The rich man, without gratitude, will always feel impoverished, for gratitude measures not possessions, but the depth of perception. Seneca advised Lucilius, "We should give thanks not only for what we have received, but also for what we have escaped." How many times have we been spared pain, anger, or folly without even noticing? How many times has life been gentler than it might have been? Even the things that did not happen carry their own quiet grace. For Seneca, gratitude was the understanding that nothing is random. Every event, every person, every turn, joyful or bitter, belongs to the great pattern of nature. What we call luck is merely harmony between circumstance and our desire. What we call misfortune is simply a gift we have not yet learned to recognize. He wrote, "What fortune gives, she can take away, but she cannot rob us of our gratitude." That is the immortal strength of gratitude. It cannot be touched by loss, because it lives entirely within the mind's attitude. The Stoic is grateful not to appear virtuous, but because he knows only in that state of thankfulness does the soul become peaceful. Gratitude is the highest form of acceptance. When we are grateful, we stop resisting fate. When we are grateful, we stop complaining. When we are grateful, we live closer to nature, where everything gives and receives without demand. Seneca wrote, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others." From gratitude comes humility. From humility, compassion. From compassion, peace. Without gratitude, virtue is a posture. With it, all virtues become real. Those who live in gratitude see the world differently. They do not ask, "What am I owed?" Or rather they ask, "How much have I already been given?" And in that realization, the heart grows still, no longer judging, no longer grasping, only marveling quietly at the miracle of existence. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Seneca, "The wise do not mourn what is missing, they rejoice in what remains." This simple sentence holds the entire essence of Stoic gratitude and of wisdom itself. Gratitude does not make life easier. It makes the mind a gentler place to live. And within that place, whether in wealth or poverty, in loss or abundance, one can smile, for one has found the one thing that can never be taken away, the grace of being alive. And once gratitude blossoms fully within, Seneca leads us to the highest summit of the Stoic path, tranquility. It is the state of a soul no longer shaken by fear or desire, serene as a lake that mirrors the whole world, yet remains undisturbed by its reflection. Part 17. The Stillness of Tranquility. Seneca wrote in De Tranquilitate Animi, on the tranquility of the mind. A man's peace of mind does not depend upon fortune, for even if it gives, it does so capriciously, and if it takes away, it takes what it never really gave. Peace, he reminds us, cannot rest upon luck, for whatever fortune bestows, it can whimsically reclaim, and what it takes was never truly ours to begin with. Once a soul has learned simplicity and gratitude, it begins to grow still, no longer chasing fame, no longer fearing loss, no longer resenting or craving beyond measure. The mind, once a restless wave, becomes a calm expanse of water. This stillness, tranquillitas animi, is the destination toward which all of Seneca's roads converge. Seneca did not speak of vague serenity or mystical withdrawal. He described instead a state of reason in harmony with itself. Peace for him was not the absence of disturbance, but the refusal to be ruled by it. He wrote, "There is no enjoying the possession of anything valuable unless one has peace of mind. No joy, wealth, love, or knowledge can be savored if the soul is unsettled, but when the mind is quiet, even the smallest things become whole." On the tranquility of the mind, Seneca likened inner peace to a ship anchored in rough seas. The waves still crash, the wind still blows, yet the vessel does not drift, for it has found its anchor within. So too the Stoic. He does not ask the world to calm, only that he no longer be carried away by its storms. Seneca taught that to attain tranquility, a person needs three things: purpose, moderation, and reflection. Without purpose, the soul wanders. Without moderation, it exhausts itself. Without reflection, it remains blind. Together, these create the harmony of action and stillness. He did not believe in peace divorced from life. The Stoic does not flee to the mountains. He lives among men, carrying within him a quiet space untouched by noise. Seneca wrote, "A happy life is one which is in accordance with its own nature. That harmony, when reason, emotion, and action align, is tranquility itself." The restless mind, Seneca observed, is one pulled in too many directions. Part of it clings to the past, part rushes to the future, part trembles beneath the gaze of others. Torn into fragments, it tires itself to ruin. Peace, then, is not about gaining more, but about gathering oneself back, drawing the soul toward its center. He advised, "Retire into yourself as often as you can." But retirement does not mean escape. It means clearing the noise from the mind until reason's voice can be heard again. In that stillness, one stops reacting to every stimulus. One learns to discern what is worthy of attention and to release what is not. One of Seneca's most profound truths is this: no man is disturbed unless he allows himself to be. It may sound severe, yet within it lies immense faith in human power. Seneca believed the soul strong enough to master emotion, wise enough to understand, and still enough to endure. That faith in our inner sovereignty is the nobility of Stoic thought. Tranquility, as he conceived it, is not the absence of feeling, but freedom within feeling. The peaceful man is not one who never angers, but one who knows that anger does not define him. Not one who never fears, but one who knows fear is only a passing wave. He feels fully, yet is never swept away. Peace arises from understanding. When we understand nature's order, we cease demanding that the world obey us. When we understand impermanence, we stop clinging. When we understand our limits, we stop judging. And when we understand that all things come and go, we learn to love life without clutching it. Seneca wrote, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." Within each of us lies a miniature cosmos. When it is calm, the entire world seems to rest with it. A mind at peace has no room for envy or fear. Seneca, a tranquil mind has no space for envy, no dwelling place for fear. Freed from the pull of external desire, it becomes an open sky, where the world may appear and pass without disturbance. Seneca concluded, "There is no delight in owning anything unshared." At first, this seems unrelated to peace. Yet it is its highest expression, for only a serene soul can give without losing, love without clinging, act without vanity. Tranquility, in the end, is not the reward of philosophy. It is the natural shape of an understood soul, a soul that no longer seeks to be calmed, for it has become calmness itself. And once the mind rests in stillness, Seneca leads us to the final summit, the wisdom of action. For tranquility is not inaction, it is the foundation of right action. To act without greed, without fear, without attachment, to act not for glory, but for the quiet correctness of the deed itself. Part 14th. The Wisdom of Action. Seneca once wrote, "Philosophy teaches us to act, not to speak." For him, knowledge was never complete until it became movement. A serene mind that sits forever in stillness is not yet whole. It must translate peace into life, stepping into the world like sunlight upon the earth, silent, yet illuminating everything it touches. Throughout his life, Seneca was a man of action. He was no recluse, no hermit hiding from the world. He served in politics, advised an emperor, wrote, taught, and struggled. Yet unlike most, he acted from calm, not from ambition. He wrote in Letters to Aurelius, "What is required of us is not much speaking, but much doing." In Stoic philosophy, the purpose of action is not success, but virtue. Right action is action in harmony with reason, action aligned with the order of nature, untouched by fear, greed, or pride. Seneca called it recta actio, right action. A Stoic does not ask, "Is this to my advantage?" but rather, "Is this right?" For in what is right, there is peace. In what is wrong, even when it profits us, there is unrest. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And much of that waste lies not in our leisure, but in actions without meaning, deeds not born of understanding. True action," he said, "begins with inner clarity. Those who do not know their aim are driven by every wind. Those who do know move by the light." Peace does not make one passive, it makes one deliberately active. The tranquil act neither in haste nor in hesitation, and never in servitude to outcomes. Seneca famously said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." But preparation to him was not merely skill, it was readiness of the mind. A clear mind recognizes the moment when it arrives. A chaotic one misses it, even as it stands before them. He saw in action a living form of philosophy. Every deed is a declaration of what we believe. If we believe in reason, our actions will carry reason. If we believe in vanity, they will carry vanity. Thus he advised, act as if your every act were to be your last. Not to rush, but to live each gesture with weight, intention, and meaning. The Stoic acts like a musician, not to perform, but to achieve harmony between hand and sound. Right action needs no audience, for its value lies in its alignment with nature. Seneca wrote, "He who does good deeds merely for the sake of doing them is the truly wise man." In those words lies the essence of purity, to act not for reward, not from fear, not for recognition, but because the act itself is right. Nature, too, does not act to be praised. It acts because it is itself. Seneca did not teach withdrawal from the world, but presence without captivity. He said, "Let us be ruled by reason, not by impulse." The Stoic moves through the current of life as a wise swimmer in the river, not resisting the water, but guiding himself with understanding. Right action is the continuation of tranquility. An unsteady mind cannot act wisely, for it trembles with the thought of outcome. But a tranquil mind acts with clarity, untroubled by success or failure, knowing that the worth of action lies in the act itself, not in its result. No great thing is created suddenly. Seneca, "Nothing great is born in haste." Seneca knew that meaningful action requires time, and only patient souls can build what endures. The impatient chase achievement, the wise seek rightness. In his philosophy, action is never separate from ethics. Every gesture, however small, is a moral statement. The way we treat a servant, respond to insult, or choose silence when we could argue. All these are philosophy made visible. Wise action, therefore, is as natural as breathing, unshowy, unforced, free from the hunger for quick reward. It moves like the rising of the sun, unhurried, yet never late. And when action becomes the expression of wisdom, man attains a profound freedom, unmoved by compulsion, unbound by result. He lives in the clarity of what is right. When action itself has become living wisdom, Seneca leads us to the near summit of the Stoic journey, harmony with nature. For to him, wisdom is not merely understanding the self, but living in rhythm with the cosmos, where everything has its purpose, and man learns to see the beauty of complete acceptance. Part 9. The harmony with nature Seneca once wrote, "Live according to nature." A short sentence, yet it is the heart of all Stoic philosophy. For him, living according to nature does not mean abandoning society or retreating to the wilderness. It means aligning the soul with the order of the cosmos. When we resist nature, we suffer. When we flow with it, we find peace. Seneca believed that within each person resides a fragment of the universe, a spark of the Logos, the universal reason that governs all life. He wrote, "We are all parts of one great body, and nature is the soul that moves it." When we understand this, we cease to see ourselves as the center of existence and begin to see ourselves as a single note in an infinite symphony. Nature, Seneca said, is never wrong. Only humans, through ignorance and ambition, struggle against its current. We want day without night, youth without age, gain without loss. And when life denies us these, we call it unjust. But to Seneca, injustice exists only in the mind that does not understand the law. Nature favors no one. It gives and takes according to its own rhythm, neither out of cruelty nor affection. He wrote, "A good character, when it is fully formed, is in harmony with the universe." This is the ideal Stoic image, a man who neither resists nor begs, neither curses nor clings. When it rains, he does not pray for sun. When the storm comes, he does not protest. He simply stands firm, knowing every wind has its place. Seneca studied nature as one studies a wise teacher. Trees endure winter without complaint. Rivers cross mountains without defiance. The sea accepts every stream and remains itself vast and calm. He saw that everything in nature follows its own essence. Only man has forgotten his, for he possesses reason, yet lives unreasonably. To live in harmony with nature, said Seneca, is to accept the order of all things. If the day is bright, we rejoice in light. If it rains, we smile beneath the clouds, not from submission but from understanding, knowing that every moment is necessary. Without rain, no harvest. Without night, no dawn. What we call adversity is merely a fragment of a whole we are too near-sighted to see. He wrote, "Submit to nature. She knows better than we what is good for us." Nature never errs because she is the intelligence of the whole. What we call loss, she calls transformation. What we call ending, she calls beginning. To live according to nature is to see through the eyes of the whole. When a flower fades, we do not mourn, for we know it will bloom again. When someone departs, we do not rage, for we know that all life returns to its source. The Stoic understands that life and death are not opposites, but two breaths of the same lung. Seneca wrote, "We die every day. Each passing moment is a part of us dissolving and another part being born. This is the law of nature, and to accept it is to accept life itself. When man lives in harmony with nature, he no longer curses heaven or fears fate. He sees that all things, light or heavy, exist for the balance of the whole. Like a single note that gains meaning only within a song, a human life finds meaning only within the greater flow." Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." This single sentence distills the entire Stoic spirit. We cannot change the wind, but we can choose how to set our sail. And when our sail aligns with the wind, the journey becomes effortless, not because the wind has changed, but because we have. Conform your life to nature, and you will never be poor. Conform it to opinion, and you will never be rich. Seneca. To live by nature is never to be poor. To live by others' opinions is never to be enough. In Seneca's time, this was a revelation. In ours, it remains a cure for exhausted souls chasing artificial measures of worth. To live according to nature is to return to the slow, the real, the unforced rhythm of being. We no longer need to prove, to compete, or to win. We simply flow with life until existence ceases to be a struggle and becomes a dance. Seneca once said, "All that happens is as familiar and ordinary as the rose in spring and the crop in summer." When we truly grasp this, suffering becomes natural, fear turns into acceptance, and life itself becomes a gentle current without resistance. And when the soul at last unites with nature, it discovers the final form of freedom. Not freedom from the world, but freedom within it. Not escape, but presence, calm amid all change. Thus Seneca leads us through the entire journey of the soul, from pain to peace, from reason to harmony with the cosmos. Yet one final door remains, the threshold where all Stoic wisdom meets its truth, death. For only by looking upon death without trembling can a human being understand what it means to be truly free. Part 2, the serenity of death. Seneca once wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." It was not a challenge, but a quiet reminder from a soul that had journeyed to the edge of thought and dared to look calmly at what most of humanity spends a lifetime avoiding. For Seneca, death was not a tragedy, but a continuation of nature. Just as sunset completes the day, death completes life. We do not call the setting sun unjust. We call it beautiful, because we understand it is necessary for the night to come, for the world to rest. So too is death, the great rest of being. In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca wrote, "Death is not an evil. What is it then? The law of all things. Nothing that lives can escape dying. Nothing that exists is immune to change. Even stars, bright and ancient, must one day fade, and in their fading they give birth to others. If death is a law of nature, then to fear death is to fear nature itself. And to Seneca, that is the deepest form of ignorance. He said, 'We are dying every day. With each breath, a piece of us passes away. Death doesn't arrive suddenly. It walks beside us from the moment we are born. The first grain of sand that falls through the hourglass begins the measure of our time.' But instead of dreading it, Seneca smiled. If death is inevitable, to fear it is to waste the gift of life. The Stoic does not pray for long life, but for a life well lived. Seneca wrote, 'It is not how long you live, but how nobly you live that matters.' A short life lived in wisdom is fuller than a century lost in confusion. The worth of time lies not in its length, but in the depth of awareness. He also said, 'To die well is to escape the risk of living ill.' It may sound somber, yet Seneca meant that death cannot rob us of dignity. Only blind living can. If we live rightly, then to die is also an act of virtue, the final acceptance of nature's law. In Stoic thought, death is not an end, but a return to the order of the universe from which we came, as water returns to the sea, as breath returns to the air. Nature lends us a form and a span of days, and then takes them back, not to punish, but to continue the rhythm of life. Seneca regarded death as an artist regards a completed painting, not with regret, but with gratitude for having painted it. He wrote, "Death is the release of the soul from the prison of the body." There is no bitterness in his tone, only a luminous calm. For the soul, to him, was never truly bound by flesh. It belonged to the cosmos, and in death it merely returns to the whole. In the final hours of his life, when ordered to take his own by Nero, Seneca showed no fear, no despair. Historians tell us he opened his veins, and when his blood flowed slowly, he calmly recited verses and spoke of philosophy with friends. Death came to him as a companion, welcomed by reason. There was no tragedy, only the quiet closing of a life well lived. Seneca once said, "Teach me to die, and you teach me to live." To understand death is not to gaze into darkness, but to learn how to cherish every moment of light. Only the one who knows he will die truly knows how to live. Each morning becomes a gift, not a guarantee. The Stoic lives as if ready to die at any moment, not in despair, but in absolute freedom. Free from fear, free from clinging, free from the illusion that one more day will complete us. When death is no longer an enemy, everything else grows gentle. Life is long if you know how to use it. Seneca, life is long enough if we know how to live it. And to live wisely, in the Stoic sense, is also to know how to die well, without resistance, without denial, without fear. In this final understanding, Seneca leaves humanity a rare peace. Death does not destroy life, it fulfills it. Without death, nothing would be precious. Without limits, nothing would hold meaning. To face death serenely is the highest form of inner freedom. No emperor can command such a soul. No fate can threaten it. It is the freedom Seneca devoted his life to attaining, and the gift he left to all who dare to think deeply. Thus the journey with Seneca ends, not with thunder, but with the stillness of understanding. From suffering to peace, from reason to nature, from life to death, he has shown us that philosophy is not a theory, but a way of living. And if anything remains after we fall asleep, it is Seneca's whisper. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. If Seneca's words have touched you, leave a small sign of this shared reflection, a like, a comment, or a quiet moment of thought, not to feed numbers, but to nurture a community of awakened minds. Let the night close in peace, and when morning comes, carry his wisdom with you, with a Senecan heart, calm, lucid, and free.